It was 2 a.m., and John had been driving for hours. The long, empty highway stretched endlessly before him, surrounded by dense trees on either side. A light drizzle had begun, and the thick fog made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. The only sounds were the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers and the distant hoot of an owl. John was exhausted, his eyelids heavy. He turned up the radio, hoping music would keep him awake. Just then, his headlights illuminated something on the side of the road, a figure standing alone in the rain. As he got closer, he saw it was a young woman, drenched, wearing a long white dress that clung to her body. She wasn't shivering despite the cold. She stood still, her gaze fixed straight ahead, her deep, sorrowful eyes catching his attention. John hesitated for a moment. Who would be out here alone at this hour? He slowed down, rolling down his window. "Do you need help?" he called out. The girl turned her head slowly, meeting his eyes. Her voice was soft, almost distant. "Can you take me home?" Something about her unsettled him, but he couldn't just leave her there. He unlocked the passenger door, and she silently slipped inside. John glanced at her as he resumed driving. Her hair was wet and clung to her pale face. Her hands rested on her lap, motionless. She was ice cold. Trying to ease the tension, he asked, "What were you doing out here so late?" She responded in a whisper, "I was going home, but I got lost." Her voice sent a chill down his spine. There was something odd about it, like it came from far away. She told him her address, and he nodded, focusing on the road. The drive continued in silence. Every now and then he glanced at her, but she just stared out the window, her expression unreadable. As they approached the house she had mentioned, John's stomach twisted. It was an old, abandoned-looking place. The windows were dark, the front yard overgrown with weeds. The house looked like no one had lived there for years. He slowed to a stop and turned to the girl. "Is this your house?" Silence. The seat beside him was empty, his breath caught in his throat. He hadn't heard the door open. The car was still locked, but she was gone. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His hands trembled as he turned back to the house. Something about it felt wrong. He hesitated, then, gathering his courage, stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. Knocking softly, he waited. After a moment, the door creaked open, and an elderly woman appeared. She looked tired, her wrinkled face filled with sorrow. "Excuse me," John stammered. "I just gave a girl a ride here. She was wearing a white dress, but she disappeared before I could say anything. Does she live here?" The woman's expression darkened. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You saw her?" John felt his throat tighten. "Yes, who is she?" The woman took a deep breath, her eyes filled with sadness. "My daughter, she died 10 years ago, in a car accident on this road. Since then, travelers like you have seen her. She asks for a ride, but she never makes it home." John took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. This couldn't be real. His mind refused to accept it. Then, he felt it, a cold breath against his neck. Slowly, he turned back toward his car, and there she was, standing by the passenger window, looking right at him. Her sad, hollow eyes locked onto his. And then, just like that, she vanished into the mist.